I promised in my last video that the next video would be about Aunt Colleen and the F words. And faith, family, and friends are the F words that I intended to talk about in that video. And for the last week and a half, I've been wallering that around, struggling with it, and I've come up with a problem. For me to talk about faith and family and friends all in the same video, I couldn't keep you here that long. I tried to make a short bullet presentation of the thoughts that I have about these three words, and it just wasn't working out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make more than one video. We're going to try to approach each one of these one at a time. As we do that, I'm not even sure I can make this in 3 videos, but I'm going to try to. And today's F word is friends, and I'm going to start talking about one of Aunt Colleen's friends. This lady's name was Patsy Foust. Patsy makes a good subject for this video because she was, number one, she was Aunt Colleen's friend. They were friends from the time they were young girls in Owensburg, Indiana. I don't know how young they first were when they first met, but from Aunt Colleen's accounts of it, they were, you know, I'm going to guess maybe even before they started to school, they were friends. And when Aunt Colleen died, and she died before Patsy did, they were still friends. And the thing about Patsy, and that fits in with all this, was Patsy was Aunt Colleen's friend. I met Patsy and her husband Don through Aunt Colleen. In fact, I knew them before I ever developed an interest in antiques. I knew Patsy Foust as Aunt Colleen's friend. And then later on in life, Patsy Foust became my friend as well. And she became a mentor for me because Patsy was an antique dealer. Don Foust was Patsy's husband. He was, I think, her second husband. I don't know what happened to her first husband, but that doesn't really matter for the sake of this story. I always knew Don as her husband, and Don was a few years younger than her, somewhere between 7 and 10, I think, years younger than her. But he was devoted to her, and he was her husband the whole time that I knew him. They lived in Owensburg, and she had an antique shop there. Wished I could tell you what the name of it was. I don't remember the name of it. It was in their home, and they had one of those 2-story Victorian homes with all the kind of gingerbread dressing on the porch and up around the eaves and stuff. And she had this antique shop in her home in Owensburg. I'm having a good day. You know you're having a good day when something that aggravated you turns into a blessing. My camera, the battery ran down on it while we were making these videos, so aggravated. I had to go plug it into the charger and wait for it to recharge before I could continue on. And so while I was waiting for the battery to charge, I was sitting over there in front of the TV listening to some bluegrass music, and I noticed a little wagon that I owned sitting under that table there, and it had some books in it. And I thought, those look like old antique guides. I believe those are the ones that I got from Patsy. And so I started looking at them, and sure enough they were. And the first couple I looked at, this one here's a pretty old one. I think it's 1980 and 81. Neat old antique guide. Cost $1.50 back in those days. Here's a later one, 1988. Really not as archaic and cool a looking a book as that one, but the price had gone up on them from $1.50 to $2.95, 1981 to 1988. Then I found a couple other interesting things, and this is where the blessing occurred. Remember a while ago when I said Patsy had an antique shop in Owensburg and I couldn't remember the name of it? Well, I found this old phone book from 1976, and right up here is a mailing label on it, and it says Patsy Foust, Gingerbread House Antiques, Owensburg, Indiana. So Gingerbread House Antiques was the name of her shop in Owensburg. The way I was describing the house, I should have been able to remember that, you know. And finally, I found another one over there, 1981 and 82, same thing, Antique Shop Guide. And $1.50 still. It's got a note written on the outside of it. It says page 66, Union Mule ad. So I opened it up to page 66, and sure enough, I found it. If you can see it or not, but right there at the bottom of page 66 is an ad for Union Mule Antiques in Bedford, Indiana. It's got Don and Patsy's name on it, and it answers another question for me. You know, I said I didn't know where they lived when they came to Bedford until they built their house on 2nd Street. The reason that is, they lived in Owensburg. It's got their phone number there, and it's got the shop phone number is a Bedford phone number, but their home phone number is still an Owensburg phone number. So they ran the Union Mule Antique Mall, or the Union Mule Antique Shop, pardon me, while still living in Owensburg. Don worked in Bedford, and he and Patsy moved to Bedford, and she opened an antique shop called the Union Mule. There was an old building there. When I was in high school, it was called Howard's Apothecary. There was a drugstore, convenience store combination in the front of the building. The rest of the building was apartments that people rented and lived in. And I think the original building probably was a hotel. And what became the drugstore and then later the antique shop was the lobby to the hotel, possibly. And it was lower on the east side or on the south side than it was on the north side, and so there was a basement under the place. And back mid to late 1860s, it was a place where people from the surrounding countryside brought mules to sell. And that mule trading business was in the basement area of that building. There was probably a fenced-in lot down there, and at ground level, and you could walk in and out of the building like it was a barn. And story has it, according to Patsy, that during the Civil War, the Union Army came there and bought mules from local traders who brought mules there to trade and to sell. And that's why she named her antique business in that building the Union Mule. She also told me that that building was part of the Underground Railroad, where black slaves were who were trying to escape from tyranny in the South and going north. They used that building as a part of that operation to take runaway slaves to safety. I've looked for documentation of that in Lawrence County history records, and I haven't been able to find anything about it, but I have no reason to doubt that Don and Patsy didn't know what they were talking about. They found it somewhere, and they named their business the Union Mule. Patsy had that shop open in, I'm going to guess, early 1980s till, I don't know, maybe it was open for 10 years. But while it was open, I frequented the place often. In fact, I used to go down there at least once a week and eat my lunch. There was a restaurant up the alley about a half a block, a fast food place called Pleasers, and I'd go there and get me a fish sandwich, and I'd get Patsy one, and I'd take it down there and we'd eat a fish sandwich, and I'd talk to her during my lunch hour. And Don brought her lunch every day, so she'd give him a heads up that I was coming that day with a fish sandwich. He didn't need to do that, so I used to go down there and eat lunch with her and talk with her about antiques and first one thing and another, and she had a great deal of influence on the kind of things that I like today, the kind of antiques that I grew to appreciate and love. She changed me as a young man from somebody that thought golden oak was the only antique worth looking at to the taste that I have in antiques and old things today. That sign's just a homemade sign. It's on a board that's 13 or 14 inches wide and about 5.5 foot long. And I don't know whether you can read it or not. The red on it's kind of hard to see, but it says Rough and Stuff Corner. And that hung in the corner of an antique shop owned by a lady named Patsy Foust. And she made the sign. After I bought the sign, she was dead when I bought the sign, but this was in a state auction that her family had after her husband died. She died before he did. After I got the sign, I painted Union Mule, Bedford, Indiana, Patsy Faust on the sign. I didn't care that wasn't originally there. I just did that to commemorate my friend and my Aunt Colleen's friend, Patsy Foust. That sign hung in the Union Mule back in a corner where she kept stuff that I would call projects that she called rough stuff. She'd just bring it in, set it there, and when somebody wanted it, she sold it to them for a reduced price. Now, she didn't do too much to things. She might clean something up or put some sealer on it, but she didn't repurpose things or rebuild things like I do. But she had a corner in her antique shop with tables and shelves that where she could display things that she called stuff in the rough. I mentioned that Patsy was my mentor, and by that I mean I learned lots of things from her about antiques and the antique business, just from talking to her and observing with her, and her talking to me about certain things about the business and about certain things she liked. And she really liked Crocs. She really liked baskets. She really liked cherry furniture. And the cherry furniture she liked was mostly the plain country style cherry, not the fancy Victorian things. She liked the flat front, plain 4-drawer, 5-drawer chest. She liked the stand tables with 1 or 2 drawers. She liked sugar boxes and blanket chests made of cherry. She liked the big, she had a big cherry harvest table. And she just loved baskets, and this was back when baskets were worth quite a bit more than they are today. This was back before Longaberger baskets, and this was back when you found a good old country basket in good shape. It commanded quite a price when you tried to buy one. So she had a lot of baskets, and she had them displayed in her house. and she had a lot of Crocs, and she had them displayed in her house. And I got to stop right here and tell you about her house. When her and Don moved to Bedford, I don't know where they lived when they first moved to Bedford, but they bought some property at 2nd and Lincoln Avenue, and they intended to build on it and build a new house. And the new house that she built was salt box, 2-story salt box architectural style house. If you don't know what a salt box house is, I'll tell you, it just very plainly looks like the old boxes with the lift lid on them that they used to store salt in. If you see those old wooden boxes, sometimes they were Crocs with the lift lid on them, but they were shaped, this house was shaped like a salt box. Probably in this video I'll put a picture of the house after a while and you'll see what I'm talking about. But for right now, she elected to build, her and Don elected to build a salt box style house, and they built it like they wanted it at 2nd Street and Lincoln Avenue. And if I were going to build a dream home for me, I would build mine from hand-hewn, primitive, rectangular shaped logs with dovetail corners, and I would have either a dog trot style house, or I would have 2 cabins with an opening between them that I would make it out of Lawrence County fieldstone. But if I had, my second choice of a house would be Patsy Faust's house. I just love that house. When her and Don did it, they did it right. They made the kitchen big and spacious like she wanted it. She had plenty of room to display her country cherry furniture, cupboards and step-back cupboards and cabinets. She had room for a 8 or 10 foot long harvest table with 8 or 10 chairs. It was open and spacious and just absolutely beautiful. Hardwood floors. It had a wide stairway going to the 2nd floor. This stairway was wider than any stairway needed to be. I'm going to say it was probably at least 6, maybe 8 foot wide, and it went up. And not too long after she got the house, she started putting Crocs on the stairway. She put a Croc, much like this one and this one. That up there where you can see it. She bought Crocs like these, and I'd call these two happen to be canning jars. They've got the place for the wax sealed lid. All the Crocs with this shape aren't canning jars. Some of them are they were used for other things. You even see some churns shaped like this. But the Crocs that Patsy put on the steps of her house were Crocs of this form, this shape. Now, I'm not showing you exactly what she put up there because I don't have any. She liked the old salt glazed Crocs like this that were gray in color. These are sand colored or brown. The ones she liked were gray. Not only were they gray, they had cobalt markings on them. The blue numbers or birds or butterflies, or in best case scenarios, advertising in blue cobalt letters and decorations on the Crocs. Now, part of my education as a young person trying to learn antiques was buy something, sell it for more than you paid for it, and be happy. And because Patsy liked these Crocs, and I could occasionally buy them, when I could buy one, I knew what she would pay me for it, and so if I could buy it for less than she would pay, I always was safe to buy that gray Croc with the cobalt markings on it. And She told me one day, Luke, when you can find a Croc like that for less than, and she named her number, I think it was $40 at that time, go ahead and buy it because I'll buy it from you. And so I said, yes, I would do that. And so for a long time, when I'd find a Croc like that, sometimes I could buy them for $10 or $15 when I found them in a garage sale or an out-of-the-way auction that no one was at, where they were, you know, dirty and an in and out building. I bought those things fairly reasonably sometimes. And then sometimes I just happened to be the only one there that liked them, and I could buy them for $20, $25. If I could buy one for $25, I would. And then I'd take it to Patsy and sell it to her. And she started buying them. And after a while, I finally decided, you know what, the Patsy pretty much knows what she's doing, and she just pays for those in a heartbeat. I think I'll test the market on those. So I started putting one, when I got one, before I take it to her, I'd put it in my booth. I was renting a booth then in Mitchell, Indiana. I'd put it in my booth, and a lot of times it would just immediately disappear, and then sometimes it wouldn't. It'd take a little while, but I could always pretty much get $45 or $50 for them. And so I thought maybe I ought to up the price on Patsy or try to sell more of them here. But I finally found out that, number one, Patsy was buying them. She'd get over to Mitchell and check my booth just pretty periodically, and usually whenever I sold one over there, she hadn't bought it. And number two, I was just about at the threshold. I could get $45 or $50 for them. When I tried to get $60 or $65 for them, they sat a while. So I decided to try to sell them and get a little more for them. And if I couldn't, just take them to Patsy. And I did that for years and years. And the last time I was in her house, probably ever, and this was when she was still healthy and before she died. The last time I was in there, she had at least 2 Crocs on every step going from the foyer where you entered her house up to that first landing. When you walked in there, you saw that stairway, and it had a Croc on this side and a Croc on this side on the steps. And in some cases, after she got a Croc on each side of the steps, she started doubling them up. Well, what I feared has happened. This episode just taking too long, and I've already edited about 35 minutes out of it. Just don't see how I can edit it anymore, so I'm going to cut it off right here and call it a 2-part episode. This will be continued in a following episode. You're going to have to wait till then to find out what happened to Patsy's Crocs. If you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. Check the notifications, and ring the bell, and it'll notify you when the next episode's coming. But it should be probably a day or two after this one is out there, because I've got most of it made. In fact, I've probably got all of it made. I just need to do some editing. The next episode will be called Friends, Patsy Foust Part 2. So until then, I'm Luke, the Hard Times Guy. Have a good day.